The following program is intended for listeners who are blind, have low vision, or another print disability that makes reading, holding a book, or turning a page difficult or impossible. The content is copyrighted by the respective publishers. For more information, please visit us on the web at nfradioreading.org.
Your Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service now presents a reading of articles and features from the Buffalo News for Wednesday, December 17th, 2025. Your readers today are
J.J. Patek
and Larry Beenan, starting with the weather. Western New York forecast. Breezy with a couple of showers today, considerable cloudiness in the morning, then clouds and sun in the afternoon, high 39. Partly cloudy tonight, low 28. A little rain late tomorrow afternoon, high 46. Friday, cooler with a couple of snow showers, and on Saturday we're looking at cloudy with a high of 40. On Sunday, a little snow in the afternoon, high 33. Monday, mostly cloudy, a high of 29. Tuesday, snow or flurries are possible. Now, the sun is rising today at 7:41 a.m. Sun sets tonight at 4:42 p.m. And the lake temperature is 42 degrees.
And there's only a little bit of shore ice, obviously, but there is shore ice out there.
Yes.
Okay, onto the front page. Attorneys seeking restricted info from Gerace's first case, from Patrick LeCamp. Lawyers for Peter Gerace Jr.'s co-defendants in the Farrell's witness retaliation case want to know what Gerace's lawyers know, but they'll need to get a judge's order first. It's not that Gerace's lawyers object to sharing the information they obtained during Gerace's previous bribery, sex trafficking, and drug case, which resulted in convictions for which he now awaits sentencing. But a court-imposed protective order in 2021 for Gerace's first case restricts some information in that case from flowing into the separate Farrell's witness retaliation case scheduled for trial in June. Lawyers for Gerace's co-defendants appeared in court Monday trying to gain this information. It's the latest development in a protracted and high-profile case over the death of Crystal Quinn, a federal witness whom prosecutors believe was retaliated against for cooperating in the federal government's bribery, sex trafficking, and drug case against the Farrell's Gentlemen's Club owner. At issue is protected information about sex trafficking victims, civilian witnesses, and uncharged people, and in some cases about events dating to 2005, 18 years before Quinn's death in the summer of 2023. The information includes statements from victims of sex trafficking, many of whom were designated as protected witnesses under the protective order in Gerace's first case. These dancers at Farrell's were exploited sexually through force, fraud, and coercion by Gerace, his friends, and Farrell's customers, prosecutors have said. None of the dancers on the government's witness list in the Gerace sex trafficking trial be called to testify in the retaliation case against Gerace, and the co-defendants, Assistant U.S. Attorney Joseph Trippi, said. So there's no need to turn over information about dancers who testified about sex acts in 2009, Trippi said in court Monday. Earlier this month, U.S. District Attorney Lawrence Villardo allowed attorney Mark Foti, who represents Gerace in both cases, to share protected information from Gerace's first case with Cheryl Myers-Booth, his co-counsel in the retaliation case. Under the judge's order, the information will not be released publicly and will only be shared confidentially between co-counsels. Without that order, Gerace's lawyers would be in one impossible situation in which one of his lawyers would have the information that he could not share with the other lawyer as they prepared his defense in the retaliation case, Villardo said on Monday. At Monday's court proceeding, attorney George V.C. Moscato, who calls Johnny T. Tommy O. Ehrman, called it a matter of fairness that he should have the same information as Gerace's lawyers. Ehrman, who worked as manager at Farrell's, has been described by prosecutors as a national leader of the Outlaws Motorcycle Club. A federal grand jury indicted Gerace and Ehrman on the same obstruction of justice, witness tampering, and retaliation conspiracy charges. The grand jury's superseding indictment accuses 4 people of conspiring to kill Quinn to prevent her from testifying in Gerace's trial. Gerace, Ehrman, Simon Gogolak, the man who called 911 to report Quinn's death in his Wellsville home, and Wellsville resident Howard Hinkle Jr. among the last to have been seen with Quinn. The jury indictment accused Gogolak of intentionally giving Quinn a lethal dose of fentanyl. All 4 pleaded not guilty and remain jailed. 2 others are accused of making false and evasive statements to law enforcement about her death. Michael Roncone, whom prosecutors said was the president of the Rare Breed Motorcycle Club's Wellsville chapter, and Frank Knight, a Wellsville resident who lived across the street from Gogolak. In building the witness retaliation case, prosecutors have sought to connect Quinn's March 9th of 2023 grand jury's appearance with Gerace's eventual detention over witness tampering concerns, Gerace's ties to Ehrman and the motorcycle clubs, and the Rare Breed Club's links to Gogolak. Shortly after Gerace was detained in April 4th of 2023 related to charges in his first case, Ehrman visited Gerace at the Niagara County Jail, and Ehrman visited again on July 6, 2023. Less than a month after the second visit, Quinn was dead. According to the prosecution's theory in the case, after Quinn agreed to cooperate with the government and testified before a grand jury, Gerace got detained and was mad about it. Ehrman, Gerace's manager at the Faros, visited Gerace in jail. Prosecutors have said Ehrman, as a national leader of the Outlaws, controls legions of people who has support clubs and puppet clubs under him, which included the Rare Breed Motorcycle Club. Then Gogolak, whom prosecutors have portrayed as someone who wants to be a hitman and socialize with the Rare Breed in Wellsville, injected himself into Quinn's life and lured her, and she overdosed in what is staged to look like an accidental or suicidal death. Defense attorneys have said they have not seen evidence supporting that theory in the circumstantial case. There's no conversations that were recorded, Moscato told the Buffalo News. There's a lot of telephone calls between Pete Gerace and my client while Peter Gerace was in jail. All of them unequivocally dealt with the business that was dropped into John Ehrman's lap. The 2 meetings in jail were nothing more than conversations about the business. My client, every time I talk to him, professes his innocence, and he's been incarcerated now for over 2 years. Moscato called the prosecution's efforts nothing more than trying to prove a case by association. He's an outlaw, so he must be guilty. You know, Moscato said, that's where they're coming from, pure and simple. Moscato and attorney Donald Thompson also represents Ehrman, says they should know about the witnesses in Gerace's first case, even if prosecutors do not intend to call them as witnesses in a retaliation case. It's likely that most, if not all, the dancers from Pharaoh's Gentlemen's Club who were listed as government witnesses in Gerace's first case knew Crystal Quinn and may have relevant information about her mental state, her interactions and relationships with Gerace, her knowledge of or contacts with any of the defendants, and her history of drug use, among other issues, all bearing on whether her fatal overdose was intentional, accidental, or caused intentionally, Thompson and Moscato said in a court filing. They were in a position to make observations and were privy to information relevant to Gerace and his relationship with Crystal Quinn and others, including employees, patrons, or individuals otherwise associated with Pharaoh's Gentlemen's Club, central to both cases, they said. At Monday's court proceeding, the judge directed defense lawyers for Ehrman, Hinkle, and Knight to discuss with prosecutors what information they want and then make a particularized request for information, and Velardo wants to hear from both sides by January 23rd.
Thank you, JJ. Despite closings, Salvation Army says it's here to stay. Declining sales, deteriorating buildings are an issue for agency. It's not Christmas time without the clanging of the Salvation Army bell as the charity's bell ringers solicit red kettle donations to support its many humanitarian projects. But this year, with a pattern of local closures and a reorganization that will shift some leadership to Erie, Pennsylvania, some Western New Yorkers are wondering whether the Salvation Army's presence here is endangered. The religious nonprofit organization will close its adult rehabilitation center, as well as its thrift and as-is stores on Military Road by the end of the year. A thrift store on Payne Avenue in North Tonawanda already closed. All of the properties are expected to be listed for sale by next month. Sometimes things like this change, and we can handle it in the most responsible way we can, said Major Roger Duperry, the administrator in charge of the local stores. I always want people to know what we're grateful for the support that we've received over the years and for the many, many people we've been able to help, he added. And really, this decision is made so that we can continue to help people in need. Several factors went into the recent local closures, which were ultimately decided upon during a larger review by the nonprofit's corporate office in West Nyack, which oversees most of the East Coast. Over the years, the sales were down in our stores, and that's the main source of income to support these rehabilitation programs, Duperre said. And the numbers of people coming into the program were not as high as they had been in days gone by. The Military Road facility has 80 beds, but had been running under capacity. At one point, there were just 9 people in the program. There's so many different rehab programs, drug and alcohol, acclimating people to work in society, Duperre said. Some of them, quite frankly, are easier than this program. It's a work therapy program, so often people go other routes. In addition, each of the buildings is very old, with deterioration making them very expensive to maintain. As we get people out of here before safety became a major issue, but you can see those things coming down the road, Duperre said. Looking for opportunities to consolidate and save money, the adult rehabilitation services will be run out of a Salvation Army office in Erie, while adults in need will be provided transportation to centers in Erie and Rochester. In the meantime, the Salvation Army pointed to its continued investment in the Buffalo area as a sign that it is not going anywhere. It has plans to transform its Main Street campus with 143 affordable apartments and 17 townhomes, as well as a community center and worship space. Work is well underway on the $20 million Hope on Main Family Homeless Shelter, which will provide 32 units and 80 beds of emergency housing. It will replace the aging and outmoded former Econo Lodge with 77 beds that has served as the agency's homeless shelter for decades. And with its new design, it will keep families together, including those with single fathers and teenage boys, so that they can get back on their feet together rather than being split up. We've been here for 140 years, and we're setting ourselves up for the next 100 years, said Major Annette Locke, a co-leader of the Salvation Army Buffalo area services. The As-Is store on Military Road in Kenmore will close Friday, while the Thrift store will close December 27th. JJ?
Thank you. The new form of dementia is identified. This is from Pat Belloc. A recently recognized form of dementia is changing the understanding of cognitive decline, improving the ability to diagnose patients, and underscoring the need for a wider array of treatments. Patients are increasingly being diagnosed with a condition known as LATE, that's acronym LATE, and guidelines advising doctors how to identify it were published this year. LATE is now estimated to affect about a third of people aged 85 and older and 10% of those 65 and older, according to those guidelines. Some patients who have been told they have Alzheimer's may actually have late dementia, experts say. In about 1 out of every 5 people that come to our clinic, what previously was thought to be Alzheimer's disease actually appears to be late, said Dr. Greg Jicha, a neurologist and associate director of the University of Kentucky Jim Sanders Brown Center on Aging. It can look like Alzheimer's clinically, and they have a memory problem, Jicha said. It looks like a duck, it walks like a duck, but then it doesn't quack. It snorts instead. On its own, late, shorthand for limbic predominant age-related TDP-43 encephalopathy is usually less severe than Alzheimer's and unfolds more slowly, said Dr. Pete Nelson, an associate director of the Sanders Brown Center who helped galvanize efforts to identify the disorder. That can be reassuring to patients and their families, but there's no specific treatment for late. Also, many older people have more than one type of dementia pathology, and when late occurs in conjunction with Alzheimer's, it exacerbates symptoms and speeds a decline, he said. Pure Alzheimer's disease is worse than pure late, he said. However, Alzheimer's disease plus late is worse than either alone, more swift, more severe, and a more brutal endpoint. About half of 85-year-olds with severe Alzheimer's also have late, said Nelson, adding that with the combination, you also have more likely to have some of the hair-raising horrible symptoms such as psychosis and urinary incontinence and other things. Late usually emerges at an older age in Alzheimer's, with symptoms generally limited to impaired memory and sometimes difficulty finding words or naming objects, said Dr. David Wolk, a neurologist who directs the Alzheimer's Disease Research Center at the University of Pennsylvania. Alzheimer's also affects the ability to plan, organize, and perform tasks, and it can cause mood and behavior changes, he said. Doctors initially told Ray Hester that he was in the beginning stages of Alzheimer's. Hester, 79, was having trouble recalling words, and his decision-making ability was declining. A blood plasma test suggested that his brain had accumulated amyloid, a protein that forms plaques in Alzheimer's, said Danica Coy, a clinical research coordinator at the Sanders Brown Center. But when Hester was evaluated further for an Alzheimer's clinical trial at the center, a brain scan showed no amyloid buildup. Coy said he did not have Alzheimer's. He had late. There's a certain amount of relief knowing that it's not Alzheimer's, his wife Sandy Hester said at their home in Versailles. Her mother and aunt had Alzheimer's, and she feared her husband's trajectory from his current pre-dementia stage of mild cognitive impairment would resemble theirs. Going to go downhill real fast, she said. But her husband's decline didn't seem as rapid, she said, adding, I'm very thankful for that. Neil Carey, 87, a retired social worker in Lexington who had previously been told had Alzheimer's was causing his mild cognitive impairment, learned after a PET scan that he didn't have Alzheimer's pathology. He and his wife, Lori Lee Clark, were somewhat relieved but also uncertain what late portended. I don't care what they call what I have, Carey said. Giving it a name isn't going to change anything. He used to have a wonderful vocabulary, he said, but now my field of words is far reduced. He still reads books, exercises at a gym, and socializes with friends, but he's increasingly forgetting names and details. He was particularly distressed when he immediately forgot the minister's homily at church one Sunday, though he'd been listening avidly. That's really scary, he said. Late began to be recognized after Nelson convened about 35 Alzheimer's researchers from around the world in 2018 to explore a designated and new non-Alzheimer's diagnosis, evaluating data from brain autopsies and other research. What sparked it for me was the fact that I didn't have a diagnosis for 30% of my cases of dementia, he said. It means we're missing something, Jack. In 2019, a group published a report naming a condition that researchers had long tried to categorize based on its biology and effects on the brain. Biologically, Alzheimer's involves plaques formed by amyloid followed by another protein, tau, forming tangles. Late involves abnormal accumulations of another protein called TDP-43. The protein was identified in 2006 by other researchers who noted its presence in other neurological disorders, including amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, or ALS. It's the nucleus of almost every type of cell in the body and is involved in genetic regulation of RNA and DNA, Wolk said. But in late and other neurodegenerative disorders, he said, the protein seeps out of the nucleus and forms clumps in the rest of the cell. In late, the hippocampus, a brain area involved in memory forming and learning, often shrinks more than it does during Alzheimer's. And Dr. Risa Sperling, a neurologist at Harvard University, who proposed the disorder's name. The first clinical trial testing a treatment for late is underway at the University of Kentucky with Hester and Carey participating. It involves Nicorandil, a drug approved in Europe and Asia to treat angina, chest pain caused by reduced blood flow to the heart. It's a heart pill, but it seems to work on the genetic abnormalities that have been linked to late, says Jika, who leads the trial because Nick Orando, increases circulation in small blood vessels. He said the hope is that it might help to keep the hippocampus from shrinking and protect brain tissue.
Thank you, JJ. You're listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on your Niagara Frontier Radio reading service. The time is 19 minutes after the hour. Trump aide admits score settling was behind prosecutions. President Trump's chief of staff said she tried to get him to end his score settling against political enemies after 90 days in office, but acknowledged that the administration's still ongoing push for prosecutions has been fueled in part by the president's desire for retribution. Susan Wiles, White House chief of staff, told an interviewer that she forged a loose agreement with Trump to stop focusing after 3 months on punishing antagonists, an effort that evidently did not succeed. While she insisted that Trump is not constantly thinking about retribution, she said that when there is an opportunity, he will go for it. Wiles made the comments in a series of extraordinarily unguarded interviews over the first year of Trump's second term with author Chris Whipple that were published Tuesday by Vanity Fair. Not only did she confirm that Trump is using criminal prosecution to retaliate against adversaries, she also acknowledged that he was not telling the truth when he accused former President Bill Clinton of visiting the private island of sexual predator Jeffrey Epstein. Over the course of 11 interviews, Wiles offered pungent assessments of the president and his team. Trump has an alcoholic's personality. Vice President Vance is a conspiracy theorist for a decade, and his conversion from Trump critic to ally was based not on principle, but was sort of political, because he was running for Senate. Elon Musk is an avowed ketamine user and an odd duck, whose actions were not always rational and left her aghast. Russell T. Vought, the budget director, is a right-wing absolute zealot, and Attorney General Pam Biondi completely whiffed in handling the Epstein files. Wiles described her own reservations about certain policies in real time to Whipple, author of a well-regarded book on White House chiefs of staff, even as debates raged inside the administration. She said she urged Trump not to pardon the most violent rioters from the January 6, 2021, which he did anyway. She unsuccessfully tried to get him to delay his major tears because of a huge disagreement among his advisors, and she said the administration needed to look harder at deportations to prevent mistakes. But she did not complain about being overruled, and at various points said she got on board with the eventual decisions. There have been a couple of times when I've been outvoted, she said, and if there's a tie, he wins. The off-script comments felt reminiscent of a similar episode in President Ronald Reagan's first term, when his budget director, David A. Stockman, likewise gave a series of interviews to what was then called the Atlantic Monthly, with candid observations that caused a huge stir. While Stockman kept his interview secret from the White House, the broader Trump team cooperated with Vanity Fair. Vance and Secretary of State Marco Rubio gave interviews and, along with top aides such as Stephen Miller and Caroline Leavitt, posed for glamorous photographs by Christopher Anderson. Wiles, a low-key Florida political strategist who ran Trump's successful comeback campaign last year, has been his most important aide this term, credited with running a more disciplined operation than he had in his chaotic first term. He has embraced her so much that he referred to her during a rally last week as Susie Trump. But the White House under Wiles is chaotic too, just in a different way. Unlike John F. Kelly, the president's longest-serving chief of staff in his first term, who saw his job as trying to prevent what he considered radical, unwise, and even illegal actions, Wiles does not view her role as constraining Trump. Instead, she makes clear that her mission is to facilitate his desires, even if she sometimes thinks he is going too far. She attributes her ability to work for Trump to growing up with an alcoholic father, sportscaster Pat Summerall. High-functioning alcoholics, or alcoholics in general, their personalities are exaggerated when they drink, she said. And so I'm a little bit of an expert in big personalities. While Trump does not drink, she said he has an alcoholic's personality and operates with a view that there's nothing he can't do. Nothing. Zero. Nothing. In a sign of how much her job revolves around his big personality, stream of consciousness, public comments, she keeps a video monitor in her West Wing office with a live feed of Trump's social media posts. His fixation on payback against his enemies offers a case study. Wiles confided in Whipple in March that she had told Trump that his presidency was not supposed to be a retribution tour. We have a loose agreement that the score settling will end before the first 90 days are over, she said. When that did not happen by August, she told Whipple that I don't think he's on a retribution tour, but said he was aiming at people who did bad things and coming after him. In some cases, it may look like retribution, she said, and there may be an element of that from time to time. Who would blame him? Not me. Among the targets, she acknowledged, was New York Attorney General Letitia James, who won a civil court case verdict against Trump for business fraud with a penalty of nearly $500 million. While that might be one retribution, Wiles said, did she advise Trump to back off? Not on her. She had $500 million of his money. As for James Comey, the FBI director who was fired by Trump while leading the investigation into Russian interference in the 2016 election, Wiles said, I mean, people could think it does look vindictive. I can't tell you why you shouldn't think that, she added. I don't think he wakes up thinking about retribution, but when there's an opportunity, he will go for it. The Trump administration has brought indictments against James and Comey, but both were dismissed by a federal judge. Reached for comment Monday evening, Wiles played down Trump's personal motivations in the actions against his enemies. It's not that he thinks they wronged him, although they did, she told the New York Times. He thinks that they wronged and they should not be able to do somebody else what they did to him. And the way that you could cure that, at least potentially, is to expose what was done. She added that she wanted to get that over with early in the term. You don't want it to get in the way of the real agenda, she said. And so loosely, let's get it all going within 90 days, which we did. Now, the justice system, which works slowly, and so even if it was initiated in 90 days, it could be a long time before it's done. In the interviews published by Vanity Fair, Wiles faulted Bondi, one of her closest friends in the administration, for her early handling of the Epstein files, an issue that has been a cause célèbre for Trump's right-wing base. I think she completely whiffed on appreciating that that was the very targeted group that cared about this, Wiles said. First, she gave them binders full of nothingness, and then she said that the witness list, or the client list, was on her desk. There was no client list, and it sure as hell wasn't on her desk. Vance, by contrast, understood the sensitivity because he himself was a conspiracy theorist, she said. Wiles said she read the Epstein documents and acknowledged that Trump's name is in them. We know he's in the file, she said, and he's not in the file doing anything awful. But neither apparently is Clinton. Asked about Trump's claims going back years that Clinton had visited the Epstein Island, Wiles said, there's no evidence. Asked if there was anything incriminating about Clinton in the files, as Trump had suggested, she said the president was wrong about that. Wiles described frustration with Musk, the billionaire who early in the year was employed to eviscerate federal agencies and fire employees en masse with almost no process. He said, odd duck. As I think geniuses are. You know, it's not helpful, but he is his own person. When he shared a post saying that Stalin, Mao, and Hitler didn't murder millions, their public sector workers did, Wiles said, I think that's when he's microdosing. Asked when she meant, she said, he's an avowed ketamine user. Musk's demolition of the U.S. Agency for International Development, including its life-saving aid to impoverished people around the world, upset Wiles. I was initially aghast, she told Whipple, because I think anybody that pays attention to government and has ever paid attention to U.S. aid believes, as I did, that they do very good work. Wiles expressed misgivings about how the roundup of immigrants has been carried out at times. I will concede that we've got to look harder at our process for deportation, she said. Criminals should be deported, she added. But if there's a question, I think our process has to lean toward a double check. When 2 mothers were arrested and deported with their children after voluntarily attending routine immigration meetings, she said, "I can't understand how you make that mistake." But somebody did. She acknowledged sharp internal divisions over Trump's announcement of major tariffs last spring. There was a huge disagreement over whether tariffs were a good idea, she said. "We told Donald Trump, hey, let's not talk about tariffs today. Let's wait until we have the team in complete unity, and then we'll do it." But he announced them anyway, and it's been more painful than I expected. Wiles denied that Trump would use the military to influence the midterm elections and ruled him out running again in 2028. His comments about thinking about an unconstitutional third term are 100% about driving people crazy.
Thank you. Down to the opinion pages. Compassionate choice. Hochul should sign the Medical Aid in Dying Act and stop needless suffering. It has taken a decade, but medical aid in dying legislation, first introduced in 2015, was finally passed by both houses of the New York legislature in June. Governor Kathy Hochul must now make the decision, a tough one, whether to sign or veto the bill. She should sign it. New York's Medical Aid in Dying Act, that A136/S138, would allow the terminally ill to take self-administered lethal medication. It's a bill about ending suffering. Even the best palliative care can't control all physical pain or the related debilitating symptoms of depression, anxiety, and delirium. Despite significant advances in palliative care, many New Yorkers have had to endure end-of-life experiences characterized by uncontrolled suffering. In 2023, the news told a story of 3 of these people: Bernadette Hopp, Jennifer Millick, and Dr. Robert Milk. Hopp, Millick, and Milk spent the last years of their lives in fierce advocacy for medical aid in dying. Milk, an internist, an internally renowned palliative care physician and a co-founder of Hospice Buffalo, wrote his final column of advocacy days before he died in 2020. From that column, suffering is something to be defined by each patient, by each person, in the context of their lives, their families, and what they are enduring. I would not presume to dictate to another human being what they must endure. Milks died in a hospital ICU and not at home as he had wanted. Hospice was unable to manage his suffering. The bill Milk and others advocated for is packed with carefully crafted safeguards. It allows a terminally ill, mentally competent adult with a prognosis of 6 months or less the option to obtain prescription medication they can take to die peacefully in their sleep if their suffering becomes unbearable. Patients must have the full capacity to understand what they are asking for and must communicate that decision to their primary physician. And the primary physician agrees to prescribe the medication. A second physician must confirm the patient's mental status and terminal illness. And finally, patients must be able to ingest the life-ending medication on their own. What gets signed might include even more guardrails than the bill already has. According to the reports, Hochul wants to create 7-day waiting periods for patients who seek the life-ending medication, to require the patients to undergo psychiatric mental evaluations and delay its start date for 1 year. This would answer one question a major opponent of the bill, the Catholic Church, has. As reported by the news, Robert Gavin, a New York State Catholic conference, argued the bill has no waiting period, which would allow for people to die on the same day they make their request. Corinne Harry, a senior campaign director for New York and New Jersey for Compassionate Choices and a strong advocate for the bill, correctly notes the time is not on the side of the people who need this relief, but compromises that help get this legislation across the finish line may be necessary. New York would not be an outlier in allowing this relief. Other states, California, Colorado, Hawaii, Maine, Montana, New York, New Mexico, Oregon, Vermont, and Washington, plus the District of Columbia, have passed versions of aid in dying legislation, with Oregon being on the first in 1997. There's also popular support for MAID, that's the medical aid in dying. A Siena University poll in June showed that 54% of New Yorkers polled supported the bill and 28% were opposed to it. It'd be more important for lawmakers to work with Hochul so that an effective version of the bill becomes law. Otherwise, aid in dying may enter the same frustrating cycle as the Grieving Families Act, which has been passed and vetoed 4 times. In honor of people like Milk and many others, Hochul should sign the Medical Aid in Dying Act.
Thank you, JJ. The editorial cartoon from Michael Ramirez of Creators Syndicate, and it shows a lady at a supermarket checkout. And at the checkout counter, there are balloons. Some say happy birthday, some say love, some say happy birthday, love you. And one says tariffs and one says inflation. And the woman says to the clerk, I would like the non-hoax affordability price, please.
Yep. Okay, I'm looking for what I'm looking for here. For an editorial, everybody's column, Burmese refugees should not lose TPS. On November 25th, the Trump administration canceled temporary protective status for citizens of Myanmar, or Burma, with Kristi Noem stating that it is safe for Burmese citizens to return home. This is blatantly untrue and disrespectful to all citizens of Burma throughout the world. Accolade data states that almost 90,000 people have been killed in Burma since the coup in 2021. As evidence for the fact that it is not safe for people to return to Burma, I present the case of one of Buffalo's own Burmese monks, the Venerable U Pinya Zata. Pinya Zata, a leader in the 2007 Saffron Revolution, came to the United States fleeing a government reprisal in his country. He arrived as a refugee with assistance from the United Nations and became an American citizen. Last November, as a United States citizen, he returned to his native Burma to do religious and charitable work, including building a school in his hometown. Although again an American citizen, U Pinya Zata was arrested, tortured, physically assaulted, and removed of his monk title. He was then in prison for almost a year until Senator Kirsten Gillibrand secured his safe return in October. If it was that dangerous for an American citizen who was a revered monk from Buffalo to return to Burma, then it is cruel to take away the protections given to the approximately 4,000 citizens of Myanmar who have claimed asylum in the United States under TPS. And this is from Kelly Cooper of Buffalo.
School district needs a less disruptive plan. The Buffalo schools plan to deal with the budget deficit is wrong. The deficit of $80 million is less than 7% of the total budget. The superintendent could have chosen to go through the budget line by line, making many small changes. It would be a lot of tedious work for him and a bit of disruption for the administration. Instead, the superintendent chose a plan that was the easiest and least disruptive for him and the administration, but the most disruptive and cool plan for the students, parents, and teachers in Buffalo. They are choosing to destroy communities rather than mildly inconveniencing themselves. It's not too late to reverse course and pick a more humane and nuanced plan to tackle a minor budget deficit. This from John Finnerty of Buffalo.
Trump's pardons and firings undermine the justice system. I watch with utter disbelief and grave concern as our federal government dismantles basic principles of accountability and impartial public service and office. Beginning with the mass firings of inspectors general, the very watchdogs tasked with preventing waste, abuse, and corruption, Donald Trump paved the way for his loyalists in office to skirt the law and look the other way at his own abuse. Using his pardoning power, the president has negated the effects of our criminal justice system in favor of corrupt and abusive individuals. He's wiped out over $1 billion in fines and restitution owed to victims, effectively protecting the well-connected at the expense of the injured. Foreign presidents who enrich themselves running arms and drugs to America. U.S. governors and federal representatives convicted of fraud and theft in office. Billionaire money launderers and cryptocurrency dark money felons all set free because they will help Donald Trump and his loyalists attain more money and power. Corruption in office is a tool used by authoritarian governments to separate the favored from the masses. By rewarding loyalists, punishing critics, and weakening independent oversight, leaders like Orban, MBS, Putin, and Xi, now Trump, create a system where personal loyalty outweighs law and power becomes insulated from accountability. We are witnessing a deliberate dismantling of our constitutional system and the sale of America for the benefit of its dear leader. Every one of us should be alarmed, and this is from Suzanne Sardella.
Thank you, JJ. Following is another voice. And this is written by Sean Rafter, and he is a resident of the Elmwood Village and a co-owner of Acme Cabinet Company. People need to learn the lesson of empathy. I was at a grocery store last weekend and I witnessed a grown man scream at the manager and storm out because he was trying to buy beer and didn't have identification. After he left, I attempted to make a joke with the cashier to lighten the mood, but it understandably fell flat. Anyone who had just witnessed the exchange was visibly uncomfortable and just wanted to finish their business so they could move on with their day. That exchange stayed with me for several days. I spent a good deal of my life in a position of service, and as a small business owner, I spend a good amount of my time interacting with customers. I think that most people who have had any sort of service position would agree that we have learned a similar lesson at these jobs. Try to be kind. It isn't always easy, but it's simple. Try to be patient. A little empathy can go a long way toward turning someone else's day around. A friend of mine recently said to me, "The day is going to happen, however it's going to happen, regardless of what you do to try and change it. What you can do is have patience and perspective. These are the things that will actually determine whether or not you have a good day." I think this is good advice. And I think this advice is a great tool to keep in your pocket during what is always a stressful holiday season. I always try to keep in mind something I was taught 20 years ago when I had my first job at the mall. Keep in mind that you never know what is going on with your customer when you engage them in conversation. A smile and a little bit of empathy and understanding go a long way. When you approach any situation with patience and understanding, the interaction is generally less stressful and can yield a more desirable result. We all have a lot to remember over the next few weeks. We might need to remember who we have to buy gifts for or what they want. We have to remember dates and times of obligations. We have to remember to prioritize all sorts of things. We don't have to think about the rest of the year. However, I would ask everyone to do themselves and everyone else a favor as you move through your day over the next couple of weeks and maybe longer. Please remember to be kind. Do it for others. Do it for yourself. Do it because we all need it. And we are now going to move on to Buffalo next. State's energy plan adopts all of the above approach. Natural gas still in mix to meet growing demand for electricity. The state's newly approved energy blueprint for the next 15 years endorses an all-of-the-above approach and keeps natural gas in the mix to help meet the rising demand for electricity. The plan, adopted unanimously on Tuesday by the State Energy Planning Board, affirms a commitment to renewables, but acknowledges a variety of energy sources will be vital for reliability and affordability. Throughout the development of the plan, the board has kept us as its North Star guiding principle that this plan should be designed to provide pragmatic guidance and recognition of the reality of the times we are living in, while continuing momentum in building the state's clean energy economy, said Doreen Harris, chair of the Energy Planning Board and president and CEO of New York State Energy Research and Development Authority. Rory Christen, chair and CEO of the State Public Service Commission, said as the state aims to transition to cleaner energy systems, ensuring reliability is critical. Unlike a home renovation where disruptions and delays can be both uncomfortable and unpredictable, disruptions to our energy systems can mean the difference between life and death, said Christian, who is also an Energy Board member. The reality and understanding of the limitations and constraints that we are operating under today permeate the state's energy plan before us. Christian said the state faces complex challenges, including aging power infrastructure, climate change, a changed federal stance toward renewables, and rising demand for electricity. And all of the above energy approach isn't simply a choice, it's our reality, Christian said. New York recognizes the need for investments in infrastructure to keep the system stable during this transition, and we must do so affordably. Governor Kathy Hochul has been scaling back the push to reach the ambitious energy targets spelled out by the Cuomo administration, and the state's strategy to slash climate changing emissions and accelerate the use of renewable power sources. Earlier this month, the state said it would pause an implementation of the All-Electric Buildings Act, which would have blocked natural gas hookups for newly built homes and some newly constructed buildings. Environmental groups have called for Hochul to stay the course with the state's administration of the state's emission reduction strategy that moves away from reliance on fossil fuels. The Sierra Club Atlantic chapter contends the energy plan unlawfully weakens existing emission reduction commitments, walks back important plans to decarbonize New York's energy sector, and does little to onboard clean energy. Inaction and continued reliance on expensive gas to power homes and buildings could cost New Yorkers on their energy bills, the environmental group said. National Fuel Gas Company in a statement praised the energy plan as a more practical and forward-looking roadmapper than the 2022 Climate Action Council scoping plan that better balances environmental goals with reliability and affordability for all New Yorkers. We believe in cleaner energy without compromise, said David Bauer, National Fuel's president and CEO. With natural gas and the natural gas system as a foundation combined with renewables, we can power a stronger, more sustainable New York for generations to come. As the state tries to keep pace with rising demand for electricity, including from AI data centers, manufacturing plants, and electric vehicles, Hochul has proposed adding at least 1 gigawatt of nuclear generating capacity in upstate New York. Harris said the plan reflects the need for the state to tap into a variety of energy sources over the next 15 years. To keep our energy system reliable and resilient, it is imperative that we consider the full spectrum of energy resources that contribute to the increasing levels of energy demand over the planning period, she said.
Thank you. From Paul Wiseman of the Associated Press, jobless rate rises to 4.6% in November, a 4-year high. The United States gained a decent 64,000 jobs in November, but lost 105,000 in October as federal workers departed after cutbacks by the Trump administration, the government said in delayed reports. The unemployment rate rose to 4.6% last month, the highest since 2021. The November job gains were higher than the 40,000 economics had forecast. The October job losses were caused by 162,000 drop in federal workers, many of whom resigned at the end of fiscal year 2025 on September 30th under pressure from billionaire Elon Musk's purge of the U.S. government payrolls. The Labor Department revisions also knocked 33,000 jobs off August and September payrolls. Hiring has clearly lost momentum, hobbled by uncertainty over President Trump's tariffs and the lingering effects of the high interest rates the Fed engineered in 2022 and 2023 to rein in an outburst of inflation. Since March, job creation has fallen to an average of 35,000 a month, compared with 71,000 in the year ending in March. Both the October and November job creation numbers released Tuesday by the Labor Department came in late because of the 43-day federal government shutdown. Those delays have made deliberations more difficult at the Federal Reserve, where policymakers are divided over whether the labor market needs more help from the lower interest rates. Tuesday's report shows that the labor market remains weak, but the pace of deterioration probably is too slow to spur the Fed to ease again in January. Samuel Toombs, chief U.S. economics at Pantheon Macroeconomics, wrote in commentary, the Fed holds its next policy meeting January 27th to 28th. The unemployment rate, though, has still modest by historical standards, and it's risen since bottoming out at 54-year low at 3.4% in April of 2023. It rose from 4.4% in September, and the number of people in the labor force, those working or looking for work, increased 323,000 from September. A rate for October was not available because of the shutdown. Kevin Hassett, director of the White House National Economic Council, said those pickups likely reflect former federal workers searching for new jobs. Probably what's going on is the 250,000 federal workers who took the buyout and are staying in the labor force and looking for work. And are therefore counted as unemployed until they find new jobs, Hassett told reporters. The latest job figures could decline in the coming months. Last week, Fed Chair Jerome Powell said the central bank thinks that hiring has been overcounted by about 60,000 jobs a month since spring. You can say the labor market has continued to cool gradually, maybe just a touch more gradually than we thought, Powell said at a news conference. Workers' average hourly wage earnings rose about 0.1% from October, the smallest gain since August of 2023. Compared with a year earlier, pay was up 3.5%, the lowest since May of 2021. The takeaway is that the labor market remains on a relatively soft footing, with employers showing little appetite to hire, but are also reluctant to fire. Thomas Feltmate, senior economics at TD Economics, wrote in a commentary, that said, labor demand has cooled more than supply in recent months, which is what's behind the gradual steady upward drift in the unemployment rate. Adding to the uncertainty is a growing use of artificial intelligence and other technologies that can reduce demand for workers.
Thank you, JJ. As part of our newspaper reading, we now present the day's death listings. If you need further information on any of these names, call us at 716-821-5555. That's 716-821-5555. Brown, Sandra L. née Barnes. Kamare, Paul J. Doring, Barbara. Fisher, Matthew J. Hincharek, Paul. Jeffers, Edward L. Skip. Crum, Paul T. Labby, Carol S. Lester, Lynn B. née Bittner. Labasi, Joyce M. Williams. Lytle, Elfrida W. Pace, Woody George. Roberts, Tina. Tromble, Charles N. Twist, Dr. John H. DDS. Also, Robert Samuelson, 79, award-winning economics columnist. If you need further information on any of these names, please call us at 716-821-5555. That's 716-821-5555.
Thank you. Now we move on to the Royal Stars, the horoscopes with Georgia Nichols. Happy birthday for Wednesday, December 17th of 2025. You're vigorous, practical, progressive, and decisive. You bring enthusiasm to whatever you do. This is a slower paced year. Take time out for yourself to rejuvenate your energy. The stars show the kind of day you'll have, 5 being dynamic, 4 positive, 3 average, 2 so-so, and 1 difficult. And it's looking like most people are going to have a pretty good day. Aries, 4 stars. Today you're intrigued by anything unusual or different because you want to expand your world by learning new things. Tonight, discover and learn. Taurus, 2 stars. You're doing some heavy thinking today, nothing trivial. You realize you will want to have a financial safeguard that's reliable. Tonight, check your finances. Gemini, 3 stars. Discussions with others are warm and friendly because the Sun, Venus, and Mercury are opposite your sign. Tonight, be cooperative. Cancer, 3 stars. It will please you to see ways to improve your job today. Likewise, you might see ways to improve your self-care rituals. Tonight, get better organized. Leo, 4 stars. There's a strong planetary footprint out in your part of the chart relating to children, socializing, and romance. Tonight, socialize and play. Virgo, 3 stars. A discussion with a family member today will be meaningful. You won't decide to make changes at home. Tonight, cocoon at home. Libra, 4 stars. Discussion with others will be profound and meaningful today. In fact, your discussion with someone might have a therapeutic effect on you because it releases something within you. Tonight, fascinating conversations. Scorpio, 4 stars. Today, you will want to feel financially secure to the best extent that you can. Carrying a $50 or $100 bill, but not to spend, but to always keep in your wallet, might make you feel financially safer. Tonight, money discussions. Sagittarius, 4 stars. Today you're attracted to the mysterious. You might read a good mystery novel or watch something mysterious and scary on TV. Tonight, you win. Capricorn, 3 stars. You're hiding a lot of yourself from everyone this time, whether you're aware of it or not. And that's okay. Sometimes we need to keep our private lives private. Tonight, privacy. Aquarius, 4 stars. A discussion with a friend or a member of a group could be exciting and intriguing. This person could teach you something that you might find fascinating. Tonight, friendships. And Pisces, 4 stars. People notice you today and they see you as someone who is strong and powerful, even if you don't feel this way. Tonight, you're noticed.
Thank you, JJ. Following is hints from Heloise. Show some kindness this holiday season. Dear Heloise, it's at this time of year that so many people feel a sense of grief during the holidays. While so many of us are enjoying family and friends during the holidays, there are thousands of people who wish desperately for someone to take them shopping or call them a couple of times a week, even if it's just to say hello and show some sincere interest and kindness. If your parents live out of state, a visit or a card with a letter inside is always fun to get. If you have family or friends who are going through a difficult time, invite them to dinner or lunch. Most of all, stay in contact. The world can look very dark to anyone who has lost a child, a partner, or even a pet. Sometimes we can't give advice, we can only listen, but show interest and assure them that we are there to support them as they grapple with their sadness. The words, "What can I do to help you?" can mean the world to another person. If at all possible, get them out of the house. Visit friends together, or see a movie or a play. You can have them help you with something such as a garage sale or with donating books to a hospital or a nursing home. Try to get them engaged in activities and in their lives. It may be that your company and kindness is the best gift they'll receive this holiday season. This is from retired Dr. J.K.M. in New York, New York. Reply, Dear J.K.M. Doctor, thank you for reminding us all that the season of joy can also be a season of sadness for others. TV background noise. Dear Heloise, I am writing in regard to the question from Lisa B. in New Hampshire. I discovered years ago that you can lower the background noise or anything else that drowns out the dialogue by setting the sound on the TV to mono instead of stereo. Adjusting the bass and treble on surround sound systems also helps. This from John M. in Waterbury, Connecticut. Ordering food easily. While traveling abroad, my wife and I enjoy eating the local cuisine. We've seen our accompanying friends having difficulty ordering a bill when they go up to the cashier, especially when there's no menu present. What I do is take a picture of the meals that they have advertised using my phone and show them the picture of the items we want to order. This way, we can order away with ease.
Thank you. Zelensky's chief allies nearing deal. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says proposal under negotiation with U.S. officials for a deal to end the fighting in Russia's nearly 4-year invasion of his country could be finalized in days, after which U.S. envoys will present them to the Kremlin before a possible further meeting in the U.S. next weekend. A draft peace plan discussed Monday with the U.S. in Berlin is not perfect, but very workable, he told reporters after the discussions. He cautions some key issues, notably what will happen to Ukrainian territory if the Russian forces occupy, are unresolved. U.S.-led peace efforts appear to be picking up momentum, but Russian President Vladimir Putin may balk at some proposals thrashed out by officials from Washington, Kyiv, and Western Europe, including post-war security guarantee for Ukraine.
You're listening to a reading of articles from the Buffalo News for Wednesday, December 17th, 2025, on your Niagara Frontier Radio reading service. We'll return for more readings after this short break. Your readers today are
J.J. Patek
and Larry Beenan.
If you or people you know shop at any of the Dash's supermarkets, please save Dash's register tapes for radio reading. Our agency receives $2 for every $100 in Dash's register tapes. Radio reading has raised thousands of dollars so far. Anyone can drop off their Dashes tapes to the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service at 1199 Harlem Road, Cheektowaga, between William and Clinton Streets. Or Dashes tapes can be mailed to the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service at 1199 Harlem Road, Cheektowaga, New York, 14227. Any questions on Dashes tapes for radio reading? Call us at 716-821-5555, and thanks for caring.
We'll continue now with our reading of articles from today's Buffalo News. Your readers today are
Larry Beenan.
and J.J. Patak.
Hotel near stadium still in cards, officials say. Orchard Park is maintaining a restrictive height limit for buildings near the Buffalo Bills' new stadium as the town finalizes its rezoning of the area. But officials don't believe that rules out a hotel coming to the neighborhood. The town reimposed a height limit of 35 feet, or about 2.5 stories, on buildings near the new stadium at Abbott and Big Tree Roads to the Hamburg border, much of which is made up of residential neighborhoods. The area around Southwestern Boulevard and Abbott already is also restricted to buildings of 2.5 stories in height. And now the town is proposing the creation of a stadium mixed-use zone, which will encompass an area extending out about 1,000 feet around the stadium property that's mostly vacant. That area will have an emphasis on public safety measures and walkability and the building of sidewalks on Abbott Road. Buildings in that zone can also be no higher than 2.5 stories in the areas closest to the over $2 billion stadium scheduled to open in July. While that may deter some developers from building a hotel there, Orchard Park Supervisor-elect Joe Liberty still has optimism a place where people can stay overnight will go up near the Bills campus, even with the height limit in place. It is something that is badly needed in a town that currently has only 3 one-floor hotels or motels, Liberty said. The goal is to anchor in a hotel or 2 around the area, he said. I don't want Orchard Park to be a parking lot. That is not in the master plan. The plan is to drive commerce, and we want to be the place to go to. The Orchard Park Town Board will hold a public hearing on the stadium mixed-use zone at 7 p.m. Wednesday in Town Hall that may hold a vote afterward on one of the final pieces of rezoning the area. Liberty said 6 forums have been held in the past few years, including public hearings and informational hearings, so residents have had multiple opportunities to provide input. We really listened and incorporated their ideas into the plan, he said. I think we've got it pretty buttoned up now where we're ready for development in Orchard Park. Liberty would like to see the creation of an entertainment district around the stadium that is anchored by a complex which would include multiple restaurants and bars where live sports could be watched and a hotel. He's also hoping for boutique shops and family-friendly activities there. A few developers have shown interest in leading such a project, but talks are still preliminary, he said. While the Bills have said they don't want to be the developer of any of these projects, the team has been open to finding ways to help. There is a multiplex like that in St. Louis where multiple restaurants and a hotel, and the building is only 2 stories, and it is very successful and always packed, Liberty said. We went there when there wasn't a game happening and had a great time. I thought that we could have something like that right around the Bills Stadium. Progress on development like that would need to happen soon, according to Liberty. It's important to create momentum next year when the stadium construction is being finished to set the stage for development in the area, he said. Without that, Liberty fears there could be little to no development in the area, as has been the case since the Bills moved to Orchard Park in 1973. Little ancillary development has occurred there, mostly due to having an open-air stadium which hosts 10 to 15 NFL games or large-scale events a year. There's hope that at least 30 games or events can occur at the new stadium, even though it will be an open-air building, and at least 100 events in total will come with all the amenities going into the inside of the stadium. There's also potential for a hotel to come to Orchard Park in another part of town. Hotel development is being targeted for commercial areas closer to Route 219 around Southwestern and Miles Strip Road, and the area near the Quaker Crossing Retail Center. In those areas, the height limit for buildings has been increased to 60 feet, or between 4 and 5 stories. Some officials in the town have thought for years that the vacant property across from the plaza, a little more than 1.5 miles from the stadium, was a prime place for a hotel. The town's height restrictions right around the stadium could also send a developer looking to build a hotel right next to the Bills campus to neighboring Hamburg, which also is evaluating and considering zoning changes to areas around the stadium. The former SUNY ECC South property in Hamburg, now a stone's throw away from the stadium, would be a prime spot for a hotel. The property could be for sale later next year after the school's final classes are taught on the campus. Orchard Park officials hired Labella Associates with state funding to complete a stadium area development study that evaluated the potential impacts of the stadium on the immediate area around it and the northwest section of the town. As part of Labella's recommendations, it proposed that the height restriction be reduced from 56 feet to the old limit of 35 feet in the area closest to the stadium around Abbott and Big Tree Roads extending to the Hamburg border. The decision was based on public input and concerns from some stakeholders and town officials, as well as analysis of a market study and concept plans that help determine the best fits for development in these areas. Much of the area is in residential neighborhoods where many residents said they would like to see more of a focus on improving pedestrian safety and enhancing landscaping around the stadium. The other areas closest to the stadium, an area from Southwestern and Abbott to California Road and the border of Hamburg, and the area of California Road east of the current stadium, were already restricted to 35-foot buildings in the town's zoning regulations. That will remain in the current plan. The town, in an earlier version of the plan, allowed for buildings of up to 4 stories in some areas near the facility, after years of limiting buildings to no bigger than 2.5 stories throughout Orchard Park. Town officials have said they want to encourage stores, restaurants, entertainment, commercial use, and office uses, green space, wider sidewalks, and places to live and stay within the areas that have been rezoned. There's also been a push for mixed-use buildings, which would bring commercial uses to the first floor and housing and apartments above them, mostly for working professionals and young families.
Thank you. From Samantha Chrisman, Buffalo's next development. East Side projects get $10 million from the state. More than 30 commercial and mixed-use projects on Buffalo's East Side are splitting $10 million from the new East Side Building Fund, Governor Kathy Hochul's office announced Tuesday. The funding will go toward renovations and additional development and is intended to bolster private investment. The East Side Building Fund awards represent the strategic deployment of resources our administration is committed to better serve the needs of a community, Hochul said in a statement. By easing the financial burden on the property owners, we are directly investing in our commercial corridors, ensuring they are revitalized and better equipped to anchor and support East Side neighborhoods for years to come. The East Side Fund was announced by Hochul in May. Critics have attacked the governor and the former Buffalo Mayor Byron Brown for what they've said is a lack of support for the development in the Buffalo's East Side. Among those award funds are Loads of Love, 61 Laurel Street, led by Brandy Barrett, a graduate of the community-based real estate development training program. Loads of Love will construct a 2-story mixed-use building with community laundromat, cafe, and affordable housing units. Legacy Developers at 273 Hickory Street. Ellen Sharif, another graduate from the development training program, will lead a project creating 29 affordable apartments and more than 6,000 square feet of commercial space in the Willard Park neighborhood. Styles of Men, 1348 East Delavan Avenue. Funds will be used for facade improvements such as windows, doors, and awning, along with HVAC and energy efficiency upgrades to commercial space. Ladies of Charity of Buffalo, 1122 Broadway. Funds will be used for exterior renovations at the volunteer-led thrift shop for families with new babies, such as new signs, windows, a new roof, masonry repairs, and improved lighting. Fat Cat's Restaurant and Bar, 965 Kensington Avenue. Funds will go toward exterior improvements such as new signs, painting, lighting, and windows, as well as interior upgrades to improve the restaurant's operations. Doris Records at 284 East Ferry Street. Exterior improvements such as windows and doors, masonry, and roofing, along with HVAC, electric, and other energy-efficient improvements. Doris Records is an iconic Jefferson Avenue store that has been open since 1962. Imperial Food Market, 3039 to 3045 Bailey Avenue. Exterior facade enhancements will be made, along with roof repairs and updated energy-efficient electrical improvements to the market. The commitment Governor Hochul has to the east side of Buffalo continues to be reflected in moments like this. Barrett, co-founder of Barrett and Benitez Development, said in a statement, "Her commitment to reinvest has ignited true change where transformational projects like Loads of Love can be a true reality." The East Side Building Fund has made grants for improving building storefronts to stabilize at-risk buildings and real estate training, as well as financial assistance to emerging developers on the East Side. The Building Fund feeds into two distinct tracks. There is one for small projects, which involves renovations to existing buildings that provide grants covering up to 90% of a total project's cost, like for things like roofing, structural stabilization, facade improvement, and signage upgrades. Those grants max out at $400,000 and administered through Heart of the City Neighborhoods, Empire State Development's partner, which will pay construction contractors directly. Anchor project funding is intended for much larger projects, providing grants that will reimburse up to half the project's total cost, up to $2 million. They involve projects with major restorations, including adaptive reuse, new construction, and associated site improvements. The fund grew out of three former Empire State Development programs: the Eastside Commercial Districts Program, Commercial Building Stabilization Fund, and Community-Based Real Estate Development Training Program Fund. Commercial or mixed-use properties on the east side, preferably those near priority business districts like Jefferson, Fillmore, and Michigan Avenues, were eligible. Nearly a dozen of those awarded funds are graduates of the Community-Based Real Estate Development Training Program, intended to support emerging developers as they work to improve their neighborhoods. More than 60 projects have received support.
Thank you, JJ. Ryan Camp plans to shake up departments, hike top salaries. Details on the structure of Mayor-elect Sean Ryan's administration are coming into focus. Deputy Mayor appointee Benjamin Swankamp detailed proposed personnel moves for Buffalo Common Council members. Swankamp is one of 4 deputy mayors appointed by Ryan, a shift from the 1 or 2 deputy mayors previous administrations have employed. The way we can run things more efficiently and stay on top of things, being more responsible to both the public and the departments that are reporting to us, Swankamp said. A draft reorganization resolution sent to council members and shared with the news by the Ryan Camp shows a net savings for the city on personnel costs for the remainder of the fiscal year, which runs through June. Proposed personnel changes include the move from 2 budgeted deputy mayors with salaries of $140,000 to 4 deputy mayors at $200,000 each. Under the mayor's office and the Office of Strategic Planning, several positions would be eliminated. The new corporation counsel, Rosa Alina Pisa, would make $171,096, $25,000 more than her predecessor. However, the office would shrink by 3 assistant corporation counsel positions. Eliminating the anti-violence coordinator position in the police department budget at $85,000, while bumping the police commissioner's salary from $174,770 to $250,000. Making the deputy parks commissioner a full commissioner again, and moving the salary from $115,970 to $137,060. eliminating positions from the Executive Director of the Commission on Citizen Rights and Community Relations and that Commissioner's Secretary. The commission created under former Mayor Anthony Mazziello's administration has long been defunct under Mayor Byron Brown. Increase the salary for the Commissioner of Permits and Inspections from $127,245 to $137,060. Swan Camp told council members during Tuesday's Finance Committee meeting that the total savings from the moves would be approximately $97,000 in annual salaries and benefits as currently configured. However, a diversity and inclusion director position that's proposed to be cut with a salary of $65,000 may be put back in after Finance Committee Chair Mitchell Nowakowski raised an objection. Council Majority Leader Leah Alton Pope asked Swan Camp during the committee session whether the incoming administration had been working with the city's human resources and civil service departments to ensure that all the moves would comply with state regulations, as she has been through that process and noted that it can be onerous. Swan Camp said he has been working closely with those departments and they are in the stages of finalizing the new titles to be ready to submit to the state. We're in good shape, he said. Ryan's Camp plans to have the amended reorganization resolution ready for a vote by the full council meeting next Tuesday. The personnel moves and all mayoral appointments are subject to council approval. JJ?
Thank you. Poll shows Hochul leading challengers. From Robert Gavin. A Seattle University poll released Tuesday shows Governor Kathy Hochul with double-digit leads over all three of her 2026 gubernatorial challengers, including a 2-1 lead over Nassau County Executive Bruce Blakeman, the most recent entrant into the race. Hochul, a Buffalo-born Democrat in her first elected term, led Republican Elise Stefanik, a Republican from Saratoga County, 49% to 30%, marking a drop in support from both candidates from a poll released last month. Hochul and Stefanik both led Blakeman, a Republican who launched his candidacy last week. Hochul led Blakeman 50% to 25%, while Stefanik led Blakeman 48% to 17%. Hochul led Lieutenant Governor Antonio Delgado, who is challenging her for the Democratic nomination, 56% to 13%, according to the poll of 801 registered New York State voters who were sampled between December 8th and 12th. Stefanik, who launched her campaign November 7th and has repeatedly referred to Hochul as the nation's worst governor, narrowed the governor's lead by 1 point last month, when Hochul led Stefanik 52% to 32%. Hochul, however, slightly widened her lead on Stefanik among independents. Hochul regained by a point the lead among Catholic voters. Asked whether they would support in would-be matchups of Hochul versus either Stefanik or Blakeman, at least 20% of the sample voters were unsure or declined to pick a candidate. That percentage was 29% in the scenario of a Hochul-Delgado primary and 34% for a Stefanik-Blakeman primary. Closing out 2025, 6 months from the primaries and 11 months till the general election, Hochul maintains a solid 19-point lead over Stefanik, with 1 in 5 voters being undecided, and currently has a larger 25-point lead over recent entrant Blakeman, Siena pollster Steve Greenberg said. When voters were asked if they had a favorable or unfavorable view of various elected officials, none of the gubernatorial candidates won even half the support from voters. Hochul scored a favorable rating of 43%, an unfavorable rating of 41%, while 16% was unsure or offered no opinion. Hochul's numbers exceeded Stefanik, 22% favorable, 33% unfavorable, Delgado 17% favorable, 15% unfavorable, and Blakeman 13% favorable, 17% unfavorable, all of whom are apparently less recognizable to the voters. The vast majority of voters said they did not know or had no opinion on Blakeman, which is 70%, or Delgado, 68%. Close to half of the voters, 44%, offered the same response for Stefanik. Asked if, as if things now stand, they would vote for Hochul next year or prefer someone else, 50% of the voters said they would prefer someone else, while 37% chose Hochul, and another 13% were unsure or offered no opinion. When voters were asked if they approved or disapproved of Hochul's performance as governor, 50% approved, 39% disapproved. Hochul's highest approval rating was among respondents who identified themselves as black voters, that's 75%, Democrats at 72%, liberals at 69%, and in New York City, 64%. Hochul won less than 50% approval among white voters at 49%. Voters earning $50,000 to $100,000 at 47%. In the suburbs, 46%. Upstate, 45%. Latino voters at 44%. And independents at 42%. Voters' ages at 18 to 34% was at 40%. And conservatives, 27%. And Republicans at 23%.
Thank you, JJ. You're listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on your Niagara Frontier Radio reading service. The time is 19 minutes after the hour, and turning to sports and clean sheet of ice as we cover some of the hockey news with the Sabres. Kekalainen's actions have to meet his bold words. Starting today, oh, how that phrase has a dubious place in Buffalo Sabres history. Remember how Terry Pegula prefaced his now infamous proclamations with those two words on February Day in 2011 when he rode in on his horse as the White Knight to save the franchise. Jarmo Kekalainen didn't put out any but of that false bravado in his opening news conference Tuesday as general manager, but it was hard not to think of starting today as the theme of his message. Everybody in this organization is on notice. Right now, the players had a meeting Tuesday morning. Lindy Ruff, and especially some of his assistants, coaches, better keep this team playing like it has much of the time, winning the last 3 games. Okay,
Oops. Did we disappear?
going from 9 to 6 in the last 15. So much more goes into it, too. From office staff, scouts, AHL and development coaches, equipment and strength staffs, medical personnel. You're all on the clock now. Kekalainen met with the team Tuesday morning, but they stayed off the ice, so we don't get a chance to talk to the players and coaches until Wednesday. Then he reportedly met with his entire hockey operations staff in the afternoon. Kekalainen knows this team is 14-4-4, that there are 32 points in 32 games, and an 82-point pace that's well below the playoff cut line in any season. Doesn't matter to him. We don't even want to look too much into the future, he said. We've got a lot of hockey left this year. I wouldn't be changing coaches right now because this team hasn't remotely quit on Ruff, and Kekalainen had plenty of good things to say about Ruff's work ethic and how their relationship has grown this season. But if things go off the rails again with Ruff, the only NHL coach currently not signed for 2026-27, don't wait until the off-season. Go get John Tortorella or Peter DeBeer in here right now. Maybe each of them would rather wait until after the Olympics since they're both involved. That would be okay too. The Sabres started Tuesday 6 points out of a playoff spot, but that could be 7 or 8 points by the time they play Philadelphia here on Thursday. Still, Kekalainen pushed back on the thought the team needs some winning streak in the range of 8 to 9 games to get back in the race. They just need more consistency, and I'm all for that. Every team is too good. You've got to work. You've got to compete, he said. You've got to be relentless, and that's what I want to identify the Buffalo Sabres to be. Losing to teams that have less talent, that outwork you, that's unacceptable. We just can't have that, and that's going to be something that we're going to work on every day. What's that a reference to? Pretty obvious. He's talking about giving up 13 goals and 2 losses to Calgary, and Ed Abborn home shutout loss to St. Louis, which had to be the worst goaltending in the league this season. There were some pretty stunning moments to Kekalainen's 20-minute question and answer session with reporters. The biggest was this: Terry has given me full autonomy to run the hockey department. We can spend to the cap. We can have every resource available for us to need to make this a better team, to make it more attractive for the guys to stay or attract free agents. That's good news. When I asked about bringing in a president of hockey operations to get Pegula's hands out of hockey, Kekalainen said that those kinds of decisions will be discussed. Here's my reaction. Starting today, there's that phrase again. Pegula needs to stay in his lane, write the checks, and let the hockey people make the hockey decisions. And maybe that even will give him more time to start making more questions asking more questions of his football general manager. In particular, how does a team with the greatest quarterback on the planet not have a decent wide receiver? Pegula spoke for all of 52 seconds and got up from his chair rather than stay with Kekalainen on the podium. That meant, of course, that he took no questions. Par for the course, so the owner may still be weak, but you have to like the strength of the new GM projected. It's a new sheriff mentality for the Sabres, badly needed. At least Pegula's one money comment resonated, said the owner on Kekalainen. He just has a confidence that I believe will help our organization in the future and the knowledge. That confidence angle, something made me think about what Elaine Benes famously used to say on Seinfeld. You don't ask, you tell. That's how Kekalainen has to approach Pegula now. If the owner wants to offer an opposite view, that's his choice. He still owns the team after all. But the GM no longer will be the school kid asking permission to do things like Kevin Adams. Kekalainen will be the adult in the room telling the owner how things operate in the NHL. Pegula better start listening and get out of the way. Another magic moment was when I asked Kekalainen point blank what he could do to rekindle the Alex Tuch extension talks that seemed to have ground to a halt. He answered in no-nonsense terms. I'll take charge of that situation now. I'll talk to his representatives. It takes two parties to agree on a number, and that both feel is reasonable, and not just for today, but moving forward. You could almost hear fans' applause coming through the walls of the room. Handling trades? One of my life's philosophy is don't be afraid to make a mistake, Kekalainen said. That's the absolute antithesis of how Adams operated too often. Kekalainen said he wants his players to play that way too. Tuesday was a very good opening act. Let's see how the hockey starts to look on Thursday.
Yeah, the new general manager's plan is nothing short of a Stanley Cup. This is from Rachel Lindsay. General Kekalainen wasted no time outlining his vision and his expectations for the Buffalo Sabres one day into his new job as general manager. We're not here just to make the playoffs, Kekalainen said Tuesday morning at KeyBank Center. We're here to try to build a championship team. A day after the Sabres announced Kekalainen as the franchise's 10th general manager, he set the bar high, extremely high, given that the Sabres haven't made the NHL playoffs since the spring of 2011. Kekalainen disregarded the past. He immediately focused on the goal of crafting a winner in Buffalo. He's done it before as an NHL general manager for the Columbus Blue Jackets from 2013 to 2024. He wants to do it again with the Sabres. Kekalainen has been with the Sabres since the end of May as a senior advisor to former general manager Kevin Adams, whom the Sabres fired Monday after 5.5 years. The Blue Jackets were 410, 362, and 97 at 528 in the regular season. With Kekalainen as the general manager, he guided the Blue Jackets to 5 playoff berths, including a first-round upset of the heavily favored Tampa Bay Lightning in 2019. Kekalainen has also worked in pro and amateur scouting and in the front offices with Ottawa and St. Louis. Kekalainen put forth his plan on Tuesday to make the Sabres into a winner. Let's take a look at what he's will emphasize as general manager. Playoffs. Yes, Kekalainen wants the Sabres to make the playoffs and not just settle for making the playoffs. This won't be an easy task for the Sabres, who entered Tuesday at 14-14-4, 8th in the 8-team Atlantic Division with 32 points, tied for 15th in the Eastern Conference with Columbus, and a 4-way tie for 24th in the NHL with Columbus, Chicago, and Winnipeg. First, the attitude has to change, and what he said, I told the players to figure out the last 14 years, kind of hanging like a cloud, a black cloud around the team, and I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to do the same thing. We're not going to sacrifice the ultimate goal for the sake of making the playoffs and then not have any sustainability for our goal as a team to take the next step in having the opportunity and the chance to compete for the Stanley Cup. We're going to have a plan. The plan is going to be to win the Stanley Cup, and we're not going to take any shortcuts trying to make the playoffs and end the drought. The emphasis on character. Kekalainen discussed the value of character among the ranks. Character as a component of talent and the need for a core leadership group among the team. He didn't name names when discussing the leadership nucleus, but he met with the team's leaders, which presumably includes captains Rasmus Dahlin and alternates Alex Took, Tage Thompson, and Matthias Samuelsson. What he said, there's a lot of core players, and I'm not going to start naming them. They know who they are. These are the guys that I met first before I met with the team. They're leaders for a reason. They've earned that, whether it's a letter or just a position in that leadership group, but they're there for a reason. They're the important guys we have to show the example of as a standard of for the rest of the guys. And everything will be evaluated. Kekalainen is known for being a precise decision maker, for digging deep and analyzing, not just to satisfy his own professional curiosity, but to see how that corresponds to what's best for the organization and for the goal of winning. When asked if there would be changes in the coaching staff, head coach Lindy Ruff is in the second year in his second stint with the Sabres. Kekalainen offered a blanket statement, but no specifics. Everything and everybody is under evaluation at this point, whether it's the scouting staff, management, or coaches.
Thank you, JJ. Replay assist turning into a big problem for the NFL. The overarching question is, when is it applied? Welcome to the Midweek Bills mailbag. Let's get right to your questions. Robert K. asks, replay assist, what does it mean that even? What does that even mean? What does it mean? The Bills didn't challenge a Patriots catch, but replay assist ruled a Buffalo catch to be incomplete. Why didn't replay assist rule the Patriots catch incomplete? When does 23 seconds minus 10 seconds equal 15 seconds? Then the clock never started with 6 seconds left in the first half, but they determined 2 seconds were left on the clock, which allowed for a Patriots field goal. J. Here's the explanation of what replay assist is from the NFL Operations Department. In 2025, Instant Replay will have an expanded ability to advise on-field officials on specific objective aspects of a play and or to address game administration issues when clear and obvious video evidence is present. Replay officials and designated members of the NFL officiating department can advise on-field crews based on clear and obvious video evidence. The expansion of the replay assistance rule facilitates the administration of the game. Left unsaid in that description is the key to the whole thing. When is it used? Nowhere in the definition of replay assistance does it say when it will be applied, which, in my mind, leads to the problems like we saw against the Pats. As for the clock, the side judge is responsible for keeping time, but once again, there is a gray area. Again, from the NFL Operations website, part of the side judge's duties are limited as he serves as the primary timekeeper if the game clock malfunctions, because the clock malfunctioned, meaning it didn't start with 6 seconds left. So was the official keeping the time on the stopwatch for that play? Again, it's not clear. Dennis K. asks, after reading a post-game comment made by a Bills player who said something to the effect that they threw some different looks at us that we didn't expect, is this an indication the players are unprepared? Are the coaches lacking awareness? J. I'm sure the coaches know that teams aren't going to run the same plays, so I'm guessing you're being facetious in that regard. I agree, Dennis, that it does get a bit tiring hearing players or coaches saying that the other team gave them a look they weren't expecting. The fair question to ask is, well, why not? In regards to the game against New England, it's worth pointing out the Pats were coming off their bye week, so it's reasonable to think that they might have an extra wrinkle or two cooked up with the additional time to prepare for the game. It does not mean the defensive effort in the first half should be excused. It was unacceptable. Of course, it's also allowed more than 31 points 4 times this season, efforts that probably should have resulted in losses, but has been bailed out in each of those games by the offense. The Bills are 4-0 in games when the opponent scores 31 points or more. That's an absurd stat. Ed in Tonawanda asks, Rasul Douglas is apparently having a very good season with Miami. He's not the first player to leave Buffalo and do well. My question is, how good are our position coaches? Do we expect any changes? Jay, there are coaching changes after most every season, so I would not be surprised if the Bills stood pat with all their coaches than I would if they made some changes. How good are they? Well, that's pretty tough to evaluate. I'm comfortable saying Aaron Cromer is darn good at his job as offensive line coach. The Bills haven't gotten much production out of wide receivers. Or Coach Adam Henry or General Manager Brandon Bean for not getting more talented players for Henry to work with. The right answer is probably in the middle. You raise a good point, adding that Douglas, as well as defensive tackle Poona Ford and Tim Settle, are good examples of players who have left Buffalo and done a nice job. They're not stars, but they are meaningful contributors. JJ?
Sam Ruggiero asked, if the Bills and Patriots finish the season with the same record, what is the order of the next tiebreaker to determine the division champion? Jay answers, let's assume the Bills win out and both teams finish 13-4. To break a tie within a division, the first tiebreaker applied is a head-to-head matchups. The Bills and Pats split that one. After that, it goes to division record. Currently, Buffalo is 3-2 in the AFC East with one game remaining against the Jets in Week 18. The Pats are 3-1 and face the Jets in Week 17 and Dolphins in Week 18. If they lose one of those games, the next tiebreaker game applied is record in common games. In this scenario, the Bills would be 10-2 in common games with New England, and the Pats would be also 10-2 if they lose a divisional game. After that, the next tiebreaker record within the conference, if the Pats lose a divisional game, they'll finish 8-4 in the AFC, and the Bills would get the edge there because if they win out, they'll finish 9-3 in the AFC. So the path to winning the division for the Bills looks like this: either finish with a better record outright than New England, finish with the same record but have the Pats lose both division games, or finish with the same record and have them lose at least one division game while the Bills win out. Unlikely but not impossible. And then GDW asks, it's no secret that the Bills have one of the worst run defenses in the league. With only 3 games remaining before the playoffs begin, do you see them at least experimenting with more 4-3 defense to help fix the problem? And Jay answers, the Bills have done that this season. The amount of nickel defense they've played this year is at 61.3% of their 786 defensive snaps, according to the NFL's Next Gen Stats. They've used a base 4-3 alignment, down 20% with those 786 snaps, which is a huge increase from last year. In 2024, the Bills were in 4-3 just 4% of the time, with the nickel package being used 80% of the time. The usage of the team's dime package has increased from 14.9% last season to 18.3% this season, and it's possible to use a base 4-3 scheme to go up even more over the final 3 weeks and into the playoffs, but that likely will be a matchup based. Thanks for all the questions this week.
Thank you, JJ. You're listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on your Niagara Frontier Radio reading service. The time is 36 minutes after the hour. Following is Asking Eric. Hosting a burden for elderly couple, but visits persist. Dear Eric, my spouse, 87, and I, 84, live in a 3-bedroom condo near a popular beach with many attractions. When we were younger, we housed guests frequently. We cannot move from our home, and we do all our own housekeeping without outside help, which we cannot afford. We've tried to reduce our active living space. We are in very good shape for our ages, but we are still 87 and 84. Requests for accommodation keep coming. A relative lives on the beachfoot and lost power during a storm, thought perhaps he and his wife could stay with us just until power is restored. An old friend asked if he and his wife, who has advanced dementia, could stay with us for his grandson's wedding because they could not find space nearby. We don't want to be rude, but we are too old to host overnight guests under non-emergency circumstances, especially guests with medical problems. A reply of, sorry, that's not possible, is met sometimes with questions or pushback, offers to cook breakfast, etc. Help! We'd like to keep good relations. From Old and Frustrated. Dear Frustrated, the pushback really gets my goat because 1, no is a complete sentence, and 2, no one should feel emboldened enough to haggle with you about whether they can stay at your house. The requests seem innocuous enough, but they need to respect your answer. If your friends aren't taking no for an answer, they have an issue with respecting your boundaries, your time, and your generosity. That's a problem that's on them. And if they let it sour the relationship, then there's little you can do short of letting them have what they want. And I'd argue, if they come stay even though they know it's a burden for you, the relationship is still sour. One solution is to preemptively tell friends and family that your capacity has changed, and after years of happy hosting, you are now happily homing. And while people are welcome to stop in to visit for a day, you're not able to welcome overnight visitors anymore. Though you've told people this in response to a request in the past, it's possible that hearing a broad declaration, perhaps in a holiday letter, will prevent them from asking in the future. And if not, you can always point to the declaration with your kind of but firm no. Dear Eric, my niece married her current husband 5 years ago. They have a 2-year-old child, in addition to 2 children from her previous marriage. Her current husband recently flipped out, screaming at my niece and her kids, including that he always hated her kids, to the extent that police had to be called and a restraining order implemented. At this event, he kidnapped a 2-year-old and didn't return him for almost a week. This was traumatic and stressful for her and the entire extended family as we tried to help her through by giving her money to pay her mortgage and moral support. After filing for divorce and for full custody of their toddler, she ended up taking this man back. Now, she is insisting that the extended family welcome him back to all of our family events. We, all of us, cannot sit with him and pretend nothing happened after the way he treated her and her children. We don't want him at family events. She is now threatening that she and the kids won't come to any event unless he is welcome, which would kill my 84-year-old father. How can we handle this? From Fractured Family. Dear family, this man sounds extremely emotionally abusive and dangerous. Though you can't control your niece, you can support her and encourage her to seek out help from resources like the National Domestic Abuse Hotline. She may not see her relationship as abusive, but insulting, demeaning, and intimidating. As a partner, are forms of emotional abuse. This behavior can escalate quickly, as you witnessed. It may take time for her to see her relationship for what it is. While her safety and the safety of her children is paramount, I understand your concern about keeping her in the fold and protecting your father's emotional state. Having her close will also help you monitor her safety and point out things that she doesn't need to accept from her partner. You don't have to give him a blanket welcome in the meantime, though. Remind her that he has amends he needs to make to the family. There was wildly inappropriate and harmful misbehavior, and there were actual crimes committed. The relationship has been broken. If he wants to make things right with the family, he needs to acknowledge what he did, apologize, and seek to repair what can be repaired.
Thank you. And from Washington News, from Carl Hulse of the New York Times, GOP's refusal to scrap the blue slip stymies Trump. A long-standing Senate practice has stymied President Trump's efforts to install his preferred federal prosecutorial candidates in states represented by Democrats as Republicans refuse to bow to the president's demand to bulldoze past minority opposition and allow the nominees to be confirmed. The tradition has armed Democrats with strong defense against the elevation of U.S. attorneys they see as unqualified or partisan and frustrated Trump as he seeks to impose his will on the federal justice system. Just 2 of the 18 U.S. attorneys confirmed so far in the president's second term serve in states with at least one Democratic senator, as the administration has sought to bypass the confirmation process. But those efforts to circumvent the Senate and install loyalists in blue states where he wants to see aggressive prosecutions have led to substantial pushback from the courts, imperiling cases brought by the Trump appointees in creating turmoil in the justice system. At issue is what is known as the blue slip, which gives home state senators of both parties virtual veto power over some judicial and prosecutorial nominees. The idea in theory is to force consultation between the White House and senators over who should fill those jobs, in line with the Constitution's advice and consent provision. It was named for the color of the paper used to register a senator's position with the Judiciary Committee. The privilege gives Democrats substantial leverage over numerous nominations, and Republicans refuse to abolish it as a rare area in which they decline to go along with Trump's wishes. They have preserved the practice even after recently changing institutional rules to allow them to steer around Democratic resistance and confirm scores of executive branch nominees in one fell swoop. Trump has made it clear that he sees the blue slip power as a gross infringement on his presidential authority to pick whomever he wants for jobs. He has repeatedly demanded that Senate Republicans do away with it. So far, to no avail, as Senator Chuck Grassley, a Republican from Iowa who leads the Judiciary Committee, has refused. They should get rid of blue slips, Trump reiterated Monday at the White House. If you have one Democrat in the state, it is not possible to appoint because of blue slips. He added that the courtesy should not be relevant anymore. This is a different world than it was 15 or 20 years ago, he said. That was a gentleman and gentlewoman's world. This is a bit different, unfortunately. Opposition by Democrats contributed to Alina Habba, a former personal lawyer for Trump, stepping down from her U.S. attorney position in New Jersey when she was found to be improperly appointed and could not win blue slip blessing from the state's 2 Democratic senators. Lindsay Halligan, who has also represented Trump, was disqualified as U.S. attorney in Virginia by a judicial ruling after a challenge to her legitimacy. 2 of her major cases were also tossed out, although she appears to be seeking now to formal Senate confirmation. As an acting U.S. attorney in Delaware stepped down last week, citing the blue slip blockade. The standing of appointed prosecutors in several other states, including New York, New Jersey, California, Nevada, and New Mexico, has also been called into question. Despite the escalating pressure from the White House, Grassley said he intended to continue to honor the blue slip after his own poll of the committee found that the bipartisan majority of members would reject any Trump nominee for U.S. attorney who did not have the required home state sign-off. He would not get anyone out of the committee. Grassley said if he didn't get them out of committee, he doesn't get them for approval on the floor in the Senate. Multiple Republican members of the panel have said they want the committee to continue to abide by the blue slip practice, fearing that if they scrapped it, Democrats would ram through the prosecutors and judges opposed by Republicans for their home states while the majority shifted and the shoe was on the other foot. Vice President Vance, who has served 2 years in the Senate, has joined Trump in his trying to ratchet up pressure on former colleagues. On Monday, he used social media to call blue slip an institutional safeguard that has outlived its usefulness. The single biggest blockade or obstacle to prosecuting the violent leftists is judges and prosecutors in deep blue areas who think violence is okay if you're a leftist, he wrote. This is why we must get rid of the blue slip process. Democrats say the problem of Trump's is of Trump's own making since he's overly politicized the U.S. attorney position and cut Democrats out of the nomination process. They are in real quicksand and sinking fast, says Senator Richard Blumenthal, a Democrat from Connecticut who serves on the Judiciary Committee. They've completely politicized the process. The Democratic blockade has not been total. Prosecutor nominees for Michigan and New Hampshire are expected to be confirmed this week as the Senate finishes its business for the year, and others are in the pipeline, including Halligan. Republicans have weakened the power of the blue slip before. At the urging of Senator Mitch McConnell, a Republican from Kentucky, the majority leader at the time, Grassley decided in 2017 to override the blue slip right for federal appeals court judges, arguing that the jurisdiction of those judges typically extended beyond one state. That change cleared the way for the confirmation of more than 50 appeals court judges during Trump's first term, despite Democratic opposition. The custom remains in place for district court judges, U.S. attorneys, and federal marshals. All posts senators see as subject to their influence.
Thank you, JJ. Pelosi's resistance to stock trade ban tarnishes legacy. Washington. It was 10 days before Christmas in 2021, and Representative Nancy Pelosi, then the Speaker of the House, was asked at a weekly news conference about an issue to which she had not given much thought. Should members of Congress and their spouses be banned from trading individual stocks while serving in Congress? Asked Brian Metzger, a reporter for Business Insider. The question caught Pelosi off guard at the tail end of a busy year during which she had shepherded through the $1.2 trillion pandemic relief package, a landmark bill to expand federal voting rights and legislation to protect gay and transgender rights, among other things. We are a free market economy, she responded brusquely. They should be able to participate in that. It was an answer that Pelosi would come to regret, and a response that fueled Republican efforts to portray her as the chief impediment to doing away with a practice that has helped to sour voters on their representatives in Washington and erode their trust in government. Pelosi will leave Washington next year as a political figure widely viewed as one of the most effective speakers in memory. Her place in history assured as the first woman to hold the post. But the widespread perception that she was on the wrong side of the debate over congressional stock trading and personally benefited from the practice has put an asterisk on that legacy. Today, an overwhelming majority of voters in both parties want to ban lawmakers and their family members from trading stock and view the practice with great suspicion. As Pelosi prepares to leave Congress, a bipartisan bill to ban stock trading by lawmakers appears to be slowly making its way to the House floor with enthusiastic support from far right and the far left. President Trump has said he would support it. Pelosi now says she would vote for it too. But people close to the former speaker, who insisted on anonymity to discuss her handling of the issue, concede that it was among the only issues that reflected poorly on Pelosi during her tenure, replacing an unfortunate blemish on an otherwise remarkable legacy. Her main reason for resisting the idea, the people close to her said, was that Republicans targeted Pelosi personally in their efforts to address the matter, and she did not want to cede any ground to attacks that implied she was corrupt. They also said that for much of the time that the issue was percolating, Pelosi simply had bigger national policy issues on her plate. And they conceded that when the issue bubbled up in 2021, Pelosi misread the depth of the public antipathy for stock trading by members of Congress. Born into a politically connected family in Baltimore, Pelosi has been wealthy for decades. As a first-term member of Congress, she reported more than $600,000 in stock holdings, according to her financial disclosure at the time. But she became exponentially wealthier during the years when her power grew, and the stock trades made by her husband, venture capitalist Paul Pelosi, were so lucrative that they spawned a cottage industry of copycats. The Pelosi Tracker app for years has clocked all of his investments and allowed its users to follow and mimic his trades. Over the past 3 years, Nancy Pelosi has reported a trade volume of $56.9 million, according to Capital Trades, a site that monitors the stock market activity of lawmakers. In January of this year, she reported that her husband traded between $8.8 million and $38.6 million in stock holdings. A large portion of the Pelosi's wealth comes from real estate investments, including buildings in downtown San Francisco that Paul Pelosi inherited. But whenever any of his stock trades raised eyebrows, Nancy Pelosi's spokesperson would issue the same one-sentence statement. Speaker Pelosi does not own any stocks, and she has no prior knowledge of subsequent involvement in any transactions. It did little to quell the impression, which Republicans amplified at every opportunity, that Nancy Pelosi was potentially benefiting from information that regular Americans did not have access to. You can't argue with the return on Nancy Pelosi's time in Congress, Senator Josh Hawley, Republican Missouri, said in a statement. She outperformed the S&P 500 by more than double in 2024. Insider trading is illegal for members of Congress, just like everybody else, and there has never been any concrete evidence that Pelosi benefited or profited from her position. But the issue has gained more attention. There has been more scrutiny of potential conflicts. A recent National Bureau of Economic Research working paper that analyzed lawmakers' stock trades found that congressional leaders outperformed rank-and-file lawmakers in investment gains by as much as 47 percentage points, in part because of their influence on and knowledge of what legislation is likely to come to the floor and pass. Pelosi shouldn't just be investigated, she should be prosecuted, Hawley said on Fox News this year. You shouldn't be able to go up to Congress and get rich by trading on information that only you have and not members of the public. Republicans have long sought to use Pelosi's wealth against her. When the issue of members of Congress trading stocks was debated in Congress in 2012, Republicans made a special effort to target her. That year, when the Republican-led House passed a bill to ban insider trading by lawmakers, they included what they named as the Pelosi provision, which prohibited members of Congress and executive branch officials from receiving special access to initial public stock offerings because of their positions. Republicans have continued to brand any legislation related to the subject with Nancy Pelosi's name. In 2023, Hawley introduced the Pelosi Act, which stood for preventing elected leaders from owning securities and investments.
JJ Patek
and Larry Beanon. Thank you for listening.
If you're listening to this publication online, you're probably using our website, a podcast player like Spotify or iTunes, a streaming service like Siro, or a smart speaker. Did you know that we now have a dedicated app that can be downloaded to any mobile device, like a smartphone or tablet, for free? App users can conveniently access our live stream and any episode of our podcast easier than ever. To download the app, just type NFRRS in the search window in the Apple App Store or in the Google Play Store. Contact us anytime if you have any questions by calling 716-821-5555, extension 5. Thank you. Coming up next in the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service, we have the New York Times Style section. Following that at noon is today's USA Today. Stay with us for these readings and more. The following program is intended for listeners who are blind, have low vision,